There's a new publication in bookstores that's a one-stop shopping for anyone looking for anything about the state of Mississippi. And judging by the size of the Mississippi Encyclopedia, nothing was left out. Putting this book together clearly was a massive undertaking involving a whole lot of people. Today, we have two of the guys at the helm of the project in our studio. Senior editors Charles Reagan Wilson and Ted Ownby. Dr. Ownby is Professor of History and Southern Studies and Director of the Center for the Study of Southern Culture at the University of Mississippi. Dr. Wilson is Professor Emeritus of History and Southern Studies at Ole Miss and former Director of the Center for the Study of Southern Culture. Gentlemen, congratulations. You had an 8.8-pound baby.
Thank you.
You know, of course, we're the 200th birthday of Mississippi, and I kind of joked earlier that y'all started this probably in the 100th birthday of Mississippi, because this took you a while to come up with, didn't it?
It did. It's 12, 13 years ultimately.
12 to 13 years. Whose idea was it originally?
I believe it came from Sita Srinivasan, who's at the University Press of Mississippi director, and she came to the Charles Wilson and Ann Ebony because of the success of the Encyclopedia of Southern Culture.
Yes, which is fantastic. Also, this thing I love about it, and it's so easy to sit there and say, well, you know, it's a book, it's probably dry, it's got stories about the counties or the governors. No, it's anything but dry. And you know, for me, there's two ways you can read it. One, you can start with page 1 and go all the way to Zig Ziglar, who is the last entry, which I thought was kind of cool. Right. Or you can just keep going, well, I don't know, what is it going to, just open it up. Oh yeah, bottle trees. Talk about how y'all came up with the ideas on who you were going to put in there and what you were going to put in there.
We had a series of editors
Yeah.
who are authorities in their field and know the topics and the people who should be covered and included.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning point. And so you had somebody in charge of music and religion and agriculture and the whole you know, important topics. And they gave us a basic list, but then we were continually updating that from other suggestions of other contributors, of historians, from our own research. And it's a growing list. We were continuing to add articles along, because we would realize, well, if you have this in, you should have that in. And so it's an expanding list. And so that process, though, was to be very inclusive. It's a scholarly book. Above all, and our Center for the Study of Southern Culture has always had as one of its concerns to bring the latest scholarship to very broad public audiences. So we had that in mind, of information that would appeal to historians and literary scholars, but also teachers, public school teachers, and journalists, tourists who are just coming to the state and to find out what's in the state. So it was multiple audiences, and to find articles that would fit those many audiences.
I walked into the newsroom today carrying it and ran into Jerry Mitchell, who's actually got an entry in the book, which I told him, I said, congratulations, you made the encyclopedia. But he was looking through and he was finding some really obscure things in there too, and he said, they really did their homework on this. This is really good.
If Jerry Mitchell thinks it's obscure, it is. That's right.
Yeah, because Jerry's pretty good with the obscure.
Absolutely.
He can generally find that.
Good.
But I mean, like I said, talk about some of the more offbeat topics and some of your favorite topics that are in it.
Some of the offbeat topics came from, we have a section editor on myths and representations. Yeah. So that means the possibility of not just studying Mississippians creating their own representations, but other people thinking about Mississippi. And,
right.
I was telling Charles I really like the entry on the Kudzu. There's a magazine, a countercultural magazine in 1968-69. It's not what people think about when they think about Mississippi as a countercultural magazine,
especially in the 1960s. Yes.
Yes, exactly. That had its own challenges, but we have lots of. There are lots of favorite entries. I did one on protest songs about Mississippi. Again, the people who stayed in Mississippi for a couple of weeks or thought about Mississippi, or Nina Simone and Bob Dylan and Phil Oakes, and people who helped create part of, an image of Mississippi from outside. And we were pretty serious about saying that's part of the story. It's not just, generated from local hometowns and from within, but from the interaction of Mississippians and people thinking about Mississippi.
I think and this is a compliment, but this isn't whitewashed. This isn't puppies and rainbows and kittens. This has got some of our darker history in it, and it's got a lot of our really great history in it too. But don't you think that's important to include all facets of history just to make it a better story, and a more accurate story?
It's a more accurate story, and I think that Mississippi is at a place in its history where it needs that, and it's willing to read about that.
Yeah.
I think we have gone through a generation, at least, of becoming aware of the complexity of Mississippi history, and it's not just a Mississippi story. It's a national story and an international story, and it's a story of often socioeconomic problems and racial conflicts, but also the tremendous creativity of the state.
Yes.
And so I think to take full advantage of the Mississippi story, you need to know all of those sides and to admit that. One of my favorite quotes is is from the article on fiction that Noel Polk, our wonderful colleague in the state, taught literature for years, and he did an article on fiction, and he began it with a quote from Richard Ford when he was asked, why is Mississippi so creative? So why so much fiction, good fiction? And the quote was, we have a lot to explain. But fiction does that in a very creative way, and our writers become legendary, and they become world-class figures because of their taking our good and our bad and seeing the humanity in it.
I've always asked, like I asked Mac McAnally this question, is it that we have great stories or great storytellers? Almost a chicken and egg thing. And of course his answer was we have both. And I think that's true. I love this right here. You have Bob White Quayle as one of the entries. So,
and
that was our fifth governor, right? Bob White Quayle? Yeah.
That was his nickname. Yeah. But if I remember right, that entry actually traces which parts of the state Bob White Quayle moved to and where they moved from. It's not a static thing. It has to do. Quail population has to do with transportation, agriculture, use of the land, and certainly game and fish regulations as well. But
yeah, tell me the story about trees, because I know somebody sitting across from me wrote the entry about trees, and you left a very important tree out initially, but somebody caught it.
So I wrote the article on Mississippi trees, and I went to the library and did much research on trying to make sure I got all the variety of trees and their different habitats, and talk about the cultural meanings of trees as writers and musicians have used them. So I sent the article to Ted and others at the center on the staff to process it. And then a few days later, it just popped into my head, I didn't include the magnolia tree. Well, it's sort of important in the state of Mississippi. The magnolia stayed in all. So we redid the article and revised it, and I'm happy to say the magnolia tree is in there.
Did they put you in timeout?
They did. That one? They did.
I thought it was an important moment in Southern Studies scholarship, because we've been fighting against moonlight and magnolias for years.
That's right.
Done. And so,
now we just got to get rid of moonlight.
Yes, exactly.
One of the things I love about the book, and we're going to jump all around on this, is the actual cover itself. Number one, I think it's absolutely a beautiful book, just from design-wise, but I love the piece of art and what it represents. It's not your stereotypical just picture of Mississippi. It kind of, to me as an artist, it kind of shows the different tapestries that make up our state.
It was important to us to think about what goes on the cover and what doesn't go on the cover. Yeah, that's a Mississippi glass artist.
Yeah.
And the press wanted something colorful and stands out and is unusual. We wanted something that would be a surprise, that didn't start with anybody's preconceptions of what Mississippi is. It doesn't start with population dynamics or agriculture or some iconic characters. I think what the cover says, along with, hey, pick me up and look at me, is this is a Mississippi we don't know what we're going to get, and that's part of what we're after.
That's what's so beautiful about it, because like I said, you can open it up at any point in the 1,400 pages and find out something new. You know, for me, and I'm an editorial cartoonist, I have done this for 30 years. I did not know Marion Barry is from Mississippi. That's stupid on my part, maybe, but I was like, he's from Itta Bena. So you learn something new every day, and that's what's so beautiful about the book. Any place you flip into it, you're going to go, aha.
That's what we're hoping for. Yeah, that we can imagine people reading, you know, going in looking for one thing, just like you go online looking for on thing.
Yeah.
But the possibility for browsing is in this book, and possibility for surprise is even greater. Yeah, we face the question of what to do with people who are natives of Mississippi who left in their childhood or their teen years, and Marion Barry came back. Marion Barry had a significant role in Mississippi,
the Civil Rights Movement,
and in the Civil Rights Movement in Mississippi, in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and then a significant life outside that, and we covered all of that. There are a few people who lived their first year or two in Mississippi, and then we couldn't find any connection after that, and they sadly are not in here. But
they'll be in for volume 2, right?
Maybe the online version.
You can do the mixtape. You can do that on that. I love, like I mentioned, bottle trees before, and of course, family reunions. And you know, I was thinking about that. It's like, why would they have family reunions? Are a very important part of the tapestry of our culture in this state.
They are. They touch on so many themes that we associate with Mississippi and the South. The importance of family and kinship and extended families. You touch on the importance of religion. Often these are around homecomings. Sometimes, you know, it's a very important date in the summer when African American families have family reunions around the 4th of July. You can look on I-55 and see as many Illinois license plates sometimes as Mississippi license plates, because that's an important moment for families to gather for family reunions. And you know, the state has experienced so much migration of people leaving the state. And so family reunions can be a way to come back and renew those relationships. A lot of people who have left to go to California or to go to Chicago, when they retire, they often come back to be with family in the places where they grew up. And then they become the mentors to the children. And family reunions are the ritual occasion when all of that is celebrated.
I noticed some of the contributors, people we've even had on the show, Curtis Wilkie, Jim Rosenblatt, Victoria Bynum's been on the show. Then you've got Alan Huffman, Emily Waxter Pettis, who writes for the AP. So how, of course you said you had experts in the field, and how did you come about finding just because that's like 700 contributors in this book.
That was an ongoing process.
That was the first 10 years of the 13, right?
That was a fun process, and it was different with this book than it was with the Encyclopedia of Southern Culture, because we used online searching and fairly. I was telling Charles, fairly often we surprised people by knowing what they were working on, and we'd get a message, how in the world? But no, we along with knowing what books people are writing or what people's specialties are. I mean, Curtis wrote on demagogues, and Vicki Bynum wrote on Free State of Jones, but along with that, we would look at what people are writing dissertations about or theses. We looked at a lot of conference presentations, and some colleagues and I did word searches on Mississippi and over and over and over. And it's been interesting also to see a number of people that we found early in their careers, and now 10 years, 12 years later, they're pretty significant scholars or other writers. And how did you get that person? Well, we got them when they were
cheap. When they weren't that great.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I was looking here. You've of course got Elvis. You've got a lot of the artists in there too. And one of the things that fascinated me was looking through the different types of artists. And by the time I got through maybe 60 pages of flipping through the book, I realized what an incredible legacy we've got in this state when it comes to the arts. And this book does it really good too.
One of the pleasures has been to highlight lesser-known musicians, and there's so many blues performers, you know, and we could have had, there's encyclopedias of the blues.
Right.
So we had to select who are the most important, but also to give a diversity and to go beyond the blues or rock even. There's an entry on Milton Bennett, who is this composer, one of the most important American composers, turns out to be from Mississippi, not any kind of popular music. And so to document those people and to broaden our understanding of music in Mississippi and what is it about the place that generates all of this creativity? Because I think that's a commonality, is the creativity, whether it's writers, it's musicians, it's artists and folk artists and a variety of people. And even in other areas, we have an entry on Arthur Guyton, who one might not think of in terms of creativity, but he was the famous physician, a researcher, medical researcher at the University Medical Center, who wrote the most influential textbook in the world on physiology. And he invented all of these devices for people with polio, which he had. And the enormous creativity that somebody like he demonstrated, our creativity goes beyond just the kind of artistic categories that we often think.
And raised a whole family, he and his wife raised a whole family of doctors too. Right. And then you've got Marshall and Jason Bolden too,
yes.
two of the greatest portrait artists that probably in the country's history. They were just really incredible too. I was looking, I like you had entry for obesity.
Yeah,
I really related to that one. That was one that was close to my stomach.
When you're mentioning how we're studying problems, it's important to me to say we study problems and we study problem solvers. So we have obesity, we have poverty, a full entry on poverty, we have entries on violence, a lot of entries on different aspects of slavery, on things that are underfunded. Have a lot of entries as well on people who address those issues, anti-slavery, anti-violence, foodways and health issues, and an awful lot of ways in which people tried to address issues of poverty or economic development or anti-poverty through education or through agricultural cooperatives, or a lot of different things. So it's a book about interaction, interconnectedness. I'm looking forward to people seeing, finding new information about obesity. Right. And sometimes those entries will reinforce the idea Mississippi is number 50, 49, 48 on some topics. And let's look at the ways that people have combated those problems, and whether people look for new heroes or new method or old methods at the same time.
Let me touch it. It's a very three-dimensional book, if it makes sense, because you can be reading through an article, and like I said, it will take you to another entry, to another. It might get you a little bit curious. Like, for instance, I was reading most of this. In fact, I think all the Civil War battles are in there, even the most obscure ones. I was really, you really did a good job capturing even, it's like Sherman ran off the road and shot a couple people, and that's in there too. I'm just kidding. But
it's hard to alphabetize.
But that's, I mean, if you love this, for me, I enjoyed that because I went from one battle and then I flipped through to another battle and then flipped through. And so I found myself about an hour later, after reading about 10 different entries on that, it had taken me through a campaign. So that is really interesting. And one of the things I love at the end of each article, you've got the footnotes. So that if you're interested in finding out more about this topic, you can go from there too. There will be an electronic edition eventually, correct?
There will be an online version 2018. Yeah, and it will be updating a lot of things, the bibliographies especially. I used to say that an online version of an encyclopedia is a life sentence, and that's not entirely a positive thing. But we've worked out ways with the Mississippi Humanities Council to put this online, make it available, and improve it.
That'll be fantastic for schools too.
Yeah,
that'd be great. And I'll be honest with you, this is a living, breathing beast now, because it's going to be something that y'all will be pretty much updating forever.
There are already things that have changed, and there are already things that we recognize should have expanded. I'm not saying who, but we knocked out somebody to add the very last entry in here, and somebody dead to include somebody alive. But on the online version, that Confederate figure will go back in there. And so it's what I found was what Charles already knew from the Encyclopedia of Southern Culture, that you could go on forever. Yeah. And at some point just have to stop and say, let's share this with the world.
Charles, your favorite couple entries, just off the top of your head?
I like colorful personalities. And I got to write the Dizzy Dean article.
Yes.
And so I included a paragraph of the quotes that Dizzy Dean is famous for, of course. You know, he slid into third base, and he was famous for using ain't. And he got a letter from an English teacher saying, you use ain't too much. And he said, well, some people who don't use ain't got jobs. And so there are people like that. The offbeat articles, I mean, they're the substantive articles, but the offbeat ones, things like the fried dill pickles.
Oh, I love fried dill pickles.
Fried dill pickles.
Yeah.
It's a Foodways article. We have lots of Foodways articles that are fun. But, you know, some of my favorites were people that I think have been so important to Mississippi and need to continue to be recognized, like Will Campbell.
Yes.
He was, of course, a minister, Baptist minister from Emmett County, who was one of the few white ministers involved in the civil rights movement and really witnessed for racial reconciliation his whole life. And so the article will bring to new generations of students this, and he's a colorful figure.
Very colorful.
Very colorful figure.
Dizzy Dean, I just say, we were driving down to the coast last week, and my son was like, who's Dizzy Dean? Which I felt as a bad father at that point. But when we got the book, I opened it up, said, here, read that. Oh, that's who Dizzy Dean is. Okay. And I told him, I said, yeah, he was a famous baseball player. But there you go. Your favorite couple?
There's been a recent movement to study local activists. So we study, you know, on the county level, on the town level. There's the voter registrar in Canton, Mississippi, named Flonzie Brown Wright, and at age 24, she couldn't vote. African American woman who could not vote. At age 26, after the Voting Rights Act, she was elected the registrar, the voter registrar. And that's quite a story in Canton, Mississippi. I think I wrote that one. I liked one that a colleague wrote on pre-manufactured buildings, in part because no one in the world would ever look up pre-manufactured buildings. But there's a very nice photograph. But for heaven's sakes, it's important in large parts of rural America, and certainly in Mississippi, of, you know, inexpensive buildings that go up, and you wonder what in the world's going on there. And this shows the companies that made them and the sort of people who choose to make them. And I like the picture. It's a square with a half circle on top of it, and it's from our colleague David Wharton. But there's something about that sense that, oh my goodness, that's something we should know about. That of course we should know about it. But who thought of that? I don't even know who thought of that. Charles? Architecture.
At what point in Mississippi's history did you start this? Because I mean, you can go way back to the Ice Age, pretty much.
There's I don't know. Their archaeology is one of our sections.
Yeah.
And so there are long stretches of history covered in just a few entries. There's a pretty thorough study of Native American nations, well known and not well known. But I don't know what the oldest entry, the farthest back. There are woolly mammoths, there are dinosaurs in this book, so that goes back some time.
And I was about to make a joke, but I'm not going to about that. No. We won't do that because I don't want to. You got Mississippi Mass Choir, little Gerald McRaney. I mean, I just love you've got Jews, which was a big part of the Delta, with the merchants and so forth on the Delta. That was a great one as well. Boo Ferris. You've got Boo in there, which is fantastic. Murley Evers, Doe's Eat Place. You made me hungry.
Okay, good.
So on that. So on the
we had to do research for that, personal research.
Did you? I was going to ask you how that went down. So you basically you just got in the car and charged the mileage on you when you got to eat at all the good places to eat. Not a bad gig. As historians, though, that had to be fun for you to sit down and get to do the research and write these entries, just for you personally getting to write them. Yeah.
I think you learn so much as an encyclopedia editor. I mean, everybody will benefit from the book, but as the editors, you have a great privilege to throw out a wide net, find out so much about the state's history. Our particular focus at the Center for the Study of Southern Culture is cultural expression and meanings, and so you're able to deal with such a variety of information. And a lot of it is very somber and serious, but a lot of it is offbeat. Some of it is offbeat and quirky, but that's that's human life, you know, and so we've tried to capture that, and I think you learn how to do research. I mean, we're trained historians, so we know how to do research, but when you are given a topic that you have to research, and it may not be something you're an expert on, and when you're the editor, you wind up writing a lot of articles, and Ted knows this more than I did. He wrote more for this than anyone.
One of us retired in the middle of this process.
But so it was a wonderful experience and puts us in touch with all these hundreds of contributors.
Yeah.
Also, it's a wonderful thing.
Well, I will say this. I would say congratulations, because here we are at the 200th anniversary of Mississippi, and I feel like that you pretty much captured it in about 1,400 pages. So it's really, but like you said, it's not just a dry read. It's really a fantastic read as well. And any final thoughts?
I think it's exciting for us to be done. It's exciting for us to be done, you know, the same year that the two new museums open downtown in Jackson. That's thinking about Mississippi as an inclusive thing, an inclusive state, inclusive society, getting everybody's story as fully as we can, and seeing how they connect to each other's story. I look forward also to hearing people's responses.
So, are you going to do book readings?
We have a lot of book signings across the state at bookstores and other places, and so we'll pull out the best quotes, and but it'll be fun to travel the state and talk to people. You know, Mississippi is famous as a storytelling place, and encyclopedias are not exactly storytelling, you know, forums, but I think there are lots of good stories in here of colorful individuals and of important historical moments and movements, and so I think it'll be fun to talk with people about all of that in the next few months.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Congratulations. Your baby is beautiful.
Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.